Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Consumed by Grace podcast. We're so glad you're here. We're your host. I'm Pastor Henry.
And I'm Pastor Brooke, and we are excited to join you for another episode in our series about the social principles in the United Methodist Church.
This is episode 3. We are talking about the economic community and what our response is for how we earn money, how we make money, how do we spend money. We have a lot to say about that, and to talk about that and give us some great insight is our friend Reverend Holly Woodall. Holly, tell us a little bit about where you are and all that fun
I will.
stuff.
Thank you for the invitation to be here. Hello, everybody. My name is Holly Woodall. I am the pastor at Fellowship United Methodist Church in Madison, Alabama. This particular principle, when they first asked me to speak, economy scared me because I'm not a numbers person, but the beautiful thing about God's economy is that it's really about what kind of relationships we're trying to create. And it feels especially important to me right now because Fellowship is a new-ish church. We are very close to our 3-year anniversary, like months away. Really, I guess at this point, weeks away. Yeah. So Fellowship has been up and running for 3 years, and we currently use space at another United Methodist Church. So we meet at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoons, which is when everybody wants to be taking their naps. But we did that because we didn't want to jump into a financial decision irresponsibly. So we are in the process of figuring out what our next move is going to be, and we think we might have a rental space that we're really interested in, but we're trying really hard to be thoughtful and slow, and instead of saying this is what we want and this is what we want to build and this is what we want to buy and this is what we want to have, we're trying to really ask what is it that God wants us to do and how is it that God wants us to build, which I think is at the heart of this social principle. So I'm excited to get to talk about it today.
Absolutely. Now, I think that's such a great little segue into the quote from John Wesley that kicks off this entire section. John Wesley had a lot to say about economic issues, had a lot to say about the use of money. So much so, in fact, he had a sermon called "The Use of Money." Isn't that creative?
How John Wesley of him.
So John Wesley. We love him.
Y'all know this. We're all nerds. And Holly will show that she's our kind of nerd.
Yes.
Yes, not just nerds. We are United Methodist nerds, which is its own kind of creature.
Yes.
When the possessor of heaven and earth brought you into being and placed you in this world, God placed you here not as a proprietor, but as a steward. As such, God entrusted you for a season with goods of various kinds, but the sole property of these still rests in God, nor can be alienated from God. As you yourselves are not your own, but God's, such is likewise all that you enjoy. And I love that. And I love the way you bring that in, talking about what y'all as a church are deciding to do, because sometimes our tendency is both as individuals, but also as churches, we see something, we want something, we need something, we go get something, and that's kind of irregardless. Irregardless is not a word. I wanted to be a word so bad.
It's not.
It's heartbreaking, y'all.
Also, word nerds.
We'll write Webster's dictionary and ask them to
It could be the word of the year.
Yeah.
For the thing, like on fleek is apparently an actual word in Webster's now. Like that.
On fleek is a phrase.
Yeah, that like it was a word or a phrase of the year a couple years ago. I'm 90% sure.
I like irregardless better.
Yeah, me too.
And anywho, we see something, we want to get it, and we don't think about the consequences of who might be affected by this, how we might be affecting ourselves or others long term by the decisions we are making. So, think about that. Again, we're stewards, not proprietors.
Yeah, and I love that too because it calls us to be thoughtful about what we choose to do with our money. It's not ours ultimately, right? It's not ours. It's ours to take care of,
right?
And to use wisely and to use according to what God's got planned for us. But it does make us. It challenges us. I would say it challenges us more than makes us be thoughtful about the way that we use money.
I agree, and I think too one of the really beautiful parts about the idea of being stewards is not only are we responsible for receiving the boon from the earth, which we are, but our primary job is to take care of. And it really emphasizes to us that we're not above. There's not a God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, people, world hierarchy that we all tend to think. Maybe Paul might be in there somewhere too, that we tend to think about. We are called to be responsible to the earth, and we are called to be responsible for the earth. So that reciprocity, I guess, because I'm in school words, it reminds us as stewards that our relationship with the earth is reciprocal. Just as we receive, we also are required by God to give.
Yeah. And so when we think about the ways that we can be good stewards of what we've been given, right? One of the first things that we talk about is economic challenges in our social principles. There's a whole big section about globalization and how we think of it on a local level, right? So we think about the way that we spend our money here, but we also have to think about the ways that we spend our money. How does that affect the whole earth? You said that earlier. How does that affect the ways that we impact people across the world?
Yeah, and this is an important thing. It's funny. Truthfully, until reading these and prepping for this, I did not look at the synergy between the different social principles and how they really do feed into one another, because so much of understanding how we care for the environment should impact how we think about the economy and how we spend our money. Because we talked about this a little bit in our last episode, coffee. Like I'm a huge coffee nerd. I love coffee, and that it's a big part of my morning ritual, because I'm one of those folks. I get up, I grind my beans every morning in an actual hand grinder. I heat water to do a pour over, like that's the kind of way I do coffee in the morning.
Don't tell Henry, but I used coffee concentrate this morning with milk added to it. Continue, Henry. It was delicious.
I'm not gonna judge. I'm not gonna judge.
He's judging.
I'm slightly judging, just because I know what coffee can be.
Yeah.
This is all beside the point.
Yes.
Y'all know whose coffee's better. Let's be real.
It's totally Henry's.
But this has one of the ways that as I've learned and become more of a coffee nerd, while also letting my faith impact my love of coffee, has caused me to think about the places I buy coffee, looking into them. How do they do things? What do they support? There's a local roaster that I support in Huntsville, who's very particular about where he gets coffee, the people he supports, what they do. There's another place that my wife and I also get coffee, that part of what they do is rescue animals, because and a portion of what you buy so the choices you make economically has a lasting impact, the second one being locally, but that first one, that impacts places in South America and Ethiopia and in Indonesia. Choices we're making as consumers here on where we buy our bag of coffee from.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I'm gonna get in the weeds for a second, but also think about.
I'm glad you think my coffee talk wasn't weeds. I appreciate that.
I'm going to go even further. I'm going into the Amazon jungle.
Oh no, not the jungle.
But thinking about last week's conversation about how that plays into, okay, if I'm buying something that comes from across the world, what is that impact?
What does it take?
It takes packing it. A person packing it. Is that person receiving a fair wage or not?
Right.
Then you have to think about the materials that it's packed in. How is that product made? Does it have to get? How does it get to you from across the world? And what are we spending in? Cargo fees and all. It's just this giant system that we have to consider when we think about. And it can be overwhelming. It can be a little overwhelming to think about all of that.
And for me, I guess my first foray years ago, decades ago now, into what it might mean to be a better shepherd and steward of the resources that I have some sort of contact with was in fair trade coffee. So it's actually near and dear to my heart, and I try to always buy fair trade. Is that one thing going to make a difference in the world? Maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, it will to somebody. But the hard reality is, the first question I always get when I try to nudge someone into purchasing fair trade is how much does it cost? It's too much money. I'm also a big egg. I don't want to get in the weed about eggs, but I spend ludicrous amounts of money to purchase eggs that are free range, antibiotic free. Because if they say cage free, that doesn't mean that they're free range.
Sure.
That's just my social message for the day. If it says cage free, they still keep them in lockdown in houses that don't have any ventilation or air conditioning. It has to say free range. Yeah. Anyway, so those two things, I spend about double what I would spend if I bought the cheapest version in the store. And people will frequently tell me I can't afford fair trade. I can't afford the extra cost. And I get that. But I am blessed, and we are blessed to be able to afford some luxuries for ourselves. I mean, coffee, maybe not for Henry, but for me, coffee's a luxury. Sure. It's a necessity for Henry.
Yeah, absolutely. But y'all would not like me.
No, I've seen him without coffee, and it's bad. But we still love him.
We do.
But coffee's a luxury anyway.
Yeah,
it's a luxury that I am gifted to be able to afford. So I had to ask myself a really hard, serious question. Am I willing to invest myself in helping other people by paying $6.99 for a dozen eggs instead of $3.99 for a dozen eggs? And I am. Because I would rather spend $4 or $5 more, maybe even $10 or $20 more per week. And I'm able to do that. And I understand there are people who can't. But I am able to spend some of my resources so that the trickle-down effect is at least lessened, if not improved. Like, at least someone is going to have a slightly better experience because I invested a little bit more of my money. And I think that that's just an important thing for us to realize. I can't fix everything. I can't pull myself out of every system that harms people, but I can take those small stands every day to say, I am willing to sacrifice part of me in order to help you. And that's where we are, I think, in this. That's what this social principle is saying to me, is I give of me so that I can help you.
Absolutely. That's one of the things it talks about, and I love the way it says it. We are part of a very consumeristic society that is now really reflects almost globally. There are pockets where the consumerism has not taken effect, but in a large way, it's everywhere now. There's negatives to that, and we can rail against it, but part of it is this is also the world we live in, and how do we adjust? And I love how it's said, socially responsible consumerism is critical in life today. We urge individuals, families, and congregations to adopt life habits that reduce unnecessary waste, promote just and equitable compensation, promote sustainability, and reduce reliance on fossil fuels. No one person, no one family, no one congregation, and at this point in time, no one nation is even going to be able to fix all of the different wealth inequalities, economic unfairness, all the different things. But as I said, we can all do something, and we can make a choice somewhere. It can be eggs, it can be coffee, it can be choosing to buy your flowers from a local flower person,
florist.
I cannot. Florist just completely left my mind.
Flower person
is fine.
Yes.
It could also mean.
Good night, everybody. I need to go drink more coffee.
Did you have
More coffee is always the answer.
I did, but apparently not enough. But
Words are hard.
There's a choice you can make. So it's funny, again, just how much overlap. Your local farmers market is a great place to go where you can get fresher and better tasting tomatoes. I know in our Arab, and I confess that I haven't bought anything with them for a long time, but there's always a bread vendor where you can go and get fresh baked bread.
One day that'll be me, y'all. One day it'll be me making that bread.
Rest in peace, Sister Sally Doe.
Sister Sally Doe. Have you seen
I
Sister
saw.
Sally? I
I'm
know.
so sorry.
One day it'll be me. I'll be out there just peddling
Her descendants
some bread.
will live on.
We'll have a second.
And do you want it or should I?
Go ahead.
It's gonna be me.
It is. It's going to be
Sorry.
me.
Oh, dear. I didn't know there was going to be singing.
Oh, there.
If Henry is involved,
That's true.
You know me.
Singing and coffee. You're true. You're right. You're right. You're right. But going back to your point about going to the farmers market, I just reiterate. I just think it's so important that the argument to doing that can't be it costs more money. Mm-hmm. I know it costs more money. Sure. I've got to make the choice that I'm going to spend more here and less here for myself, because if I don't, then I'm not. It's so easy to say nobody can do anything. It's too much. Like what I think your statement, when even one nation is not necessarily going to be able to fix the whole problem, is so painful but true. And within that nation, I'm one very insignificant person. And it can be easy to say there's nothing I can do.
So I just won't.
So I won't do anything.
Yeah.
Well, okay, if I can do... What's that expression? Well, I know every journey begins with a single step, but instead of doing like one hard thing a day, do a bunch of small things today, and then they'll add up to a big thing. If we can do those small things each and every day of our lives, and all of us in the United Methodist Church did that, then something it isn't just a church or a nation, it's a movement around this entire world that changes things. It's worth it's worth trying.
Yeah,
And
sure.
it's funny, in my sermon this week, prepping for everything, I've been reading in famous United Methodist preacher and scholar Fred Craddock in his Luke commentary.
Also a Craddock nerd.
And one of the things that he wrote in the particular chapter I'm in is, most of us are not going to be called to do great things. Most of us are not going to write a book. Most of us are not going to meet with a royal person. Most of us aren't going to do this, that, and the other. But we are going to have a chance to teach Sunday school, take someone a meal, have a chance to send a friend a card. And he lists off, a dozen normal everyday life things that are the things that we can do that, yes, it doesn't make a difference in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But it made a difference there, and it shows our faithfulness to what God has called us to.
Yes.
Yeah. It reminds me of this story. I know y'all have heard it before about the starfish on the beach, and the little boy. Were we here?
Yep.
Yep. The little boy finds a starfish, and there's a bunch of them, right? Hundreds of starfish, and he goes up and he picks it up and he throws it in the water, and then he finds another one and throws it in the water, and whoever was with him, his dad or his granddad or whoever saw him, said, well, you'll never be able to throw all of these starfish into this ocean. Why does it matter? And he said, well, it matters to this starfish.
Yes.
And it matters to this starfish. And that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Like those one little choice that can make an impact, even if it's just one person, it's making that impact.
Well, and, let's just say no one is impacted. Let's just say that one starfish was like, I didn't want to get saved.
Yeah.
And nothing. What's going to happen to you when you get home is you're going to have that experience of having saved that starfish, and it's going to make you do one more thing. And then it's going to make you do another thing. Sure. And then it's going to make your family and your friends and your coworkers see, oh, well, if Brooke is doing that one thing, I could do that one thing. And then I'm going to do. So it isn't just what can happen beyond what I'm ever going to be able to see. It's what seed can I plant in here that's going to grow and become something that is truly sustainable and sustaining of life in all ways. Yeah. And I may never see the fruits of that, but it's worth it to know we're doing it.
Absolutely. Well, and you're planting seeds in the hearts of others, and all of that comes from our place of faith.
Right.
What we know to be true about who God is and who God wants us to be. And so I think you're right. Either way, it's impacting somebody, whether it's ourselves or the seeds that we're planting in people's life. So.
Right.
And that, you do have to look at where you are and get started. But that, that's one of the things that you said, Holly, that I think is so true. Especially for those of us who we have been blessed with some way. We have some sort of financial independence. We have some sort of, we are in a state where we can make the choice. What the social principles, truly lifting out of the gospel and really just all over the entire Bible is, it's an opportunity, yes, but it's also a responsibility that we have to use what God has blessed us with to better the world around us, and particularly those who are suffering the hardest from different things.
Because ultimately, right, we're called to care for the least of these. There's a great little part in here that talks about this. It says, few biblical themes are as prominent or as numerous as the scriptural injunctions to stand in solidarity with the least of these, including the poor, the orphan, the widow, the stranger, and all other vulnerable members of society. And that's, again, it's just a reminder of what we've been called to do while we're here, right? Is to be good stewards of what God has given us. And that is, we all come from a place of privilege to this conversation.
Yes.
And so, even more so, a call on us to care for those who are our neighbors.
Yeah, and sometimes, a lot of times, the word privilege can get a bit of a bad name, and I get why, but to me, I think privilege can, when we can look at it in its right place, because a lot of times I think the knee-jerk reaction will be if you say, well, because it can be used pejoratively, right? Well, you're privileged.
Sure.
And you can hear that as a pejorative, but truly that doesn't, I don't think it has to mean, let me rephrase that. It does mean that, but if we acknowledge that, yes, in this way we are very blessed, and now we have a chance to do something good with that doesn't have, to me, that doesn't have to carry the same, negative, defeating drive to go forward. No, recognize, you know what, I've been, call it privilege, call it luck, call it blessed, call it fortunate, call it whatever you want. But what that means is you now have an opportunity to do some good with what you've been given.
Right. And what a gift that is. Because, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about women in ministry, and, that's a whole different podcast. And
you'll do that later.
Yeah. We can invite Henry. Yeah. And it's important.
I will sit quietly.
Yeah.
No.
Well, but that, if in regards to, women, if men like Henry don't stand up, then it's going to take so much longer for this voice to be heard. So if we, as people who recognize that we are blessed and fortunate and have privilege in the best ways, and also in not the best ways, I think it's important for us to recognize that we are squandering a resource, and make it very economic sounding. We are squandering the resource of our willingness to stand, because someone who is invisible is already fighting to become visible. But if those of us who see them don't stand up and say, I see them, they're not invisible, then their fight is thousands times harder. So if you're fortunate enough to have some sort of privilege that gives you a voice, that gives you an opportunity to create a podcast on a Tuesday morning, if you don't use it to stand up and say, God told me that I love everybody on this planet regardless of who or what they are, then I'm wasting a resource that God has given me. And shame on us as a church for wasting that resource because we're afraid to stand up to say what is right.
Sure.
So while I was hesitant about talking about the economic social principle, I'm really glad you picked this one, because my spending power as a human being is God, and I am not spending God the way that I need to, so that my neighbors who are marginalized and oppressed and invisible are seen, and I need to do a better job at that.
Phil Vischer from the Holy Post podcast, I caught a snippet of one of their more recent podcasts where he was just talking about voting as an act of discipleship.
Yes.
And
yes.
Truly how we spend our money can also be an act of discipleship,
That's
because
beautiful.
there are ways that you can spend your money that are beneficial to the kingdom of God, to people around you. And that's kind of, it's a process of figuring out what that's going to look like, because this is not one of those things that you become aware of something and you just automatically flip a switch and it happens. No, it takes a little time to figure out, and even learning. You learn just for instance, like think about like one of the easy ones. Say, well, okay, I'm just going to quit eating fast food. And that's going to be my way of doing things. And that might work. But what if in your particular town there's a fast food restaurant that is engaging in works of mercy? Because a lot of fast food restaurants are yes, they're part of the big thing, but they're franchised and they're owned by local people, and local people have a chance to do a lot of economic good. Not all of them are created equal.
Sure.
So
again,
that's a good point. You kind of figure out what it looks like in your area and how that works, and there's not necessarily just a blanket, hey, I just won't do this, won't do this, won't do this.
Right. That's a really good point.
Yeah. Well, and again, it goes back to what we've already said about making those little choices. Like every day, just being conscious and bringing ourselves, into the equation to say, what am I doing? Is it using my voice? Is it the way that I spend my money? Is it the way that I vote? Is it the way that I'm calling on other people to think about this in different ways? Like, what are we doing to make sure that and it doesn't have to be about spending money. Right. It doesn't have to be about the dollar. Yeah. And I think that's honestly probably, could possibly make a bigger impact. Right. If we are doing it the right way. So.
Somewhere in one of the principles, there's a statement that I sort of sum it up as, you cannot be in an environment without being part of the economic system that's in that environment. And something that you said made me think of that, because, we're part of this world, and we call ourselves Christians. We encourage people to identify us as that. Because we're part of the economic systems in our country and in our world today, we're speaking and we're proving our values and our goals and the things that we hold dear and precious and godly by every action that we take. So if we aren't making the effort, then we're making the effort in the opposite direction to say that we don't care what God says, that we read the Bible, but that we don't believe him when he says to care for the vulnerable, because we don't want to be vulnerable. We're taught from an early age in America that vulnerability is weakness and shameful, and you've got to hide all vulnerabilities. So when God calls us to say, you have to see the people who are vulnerable, we immediately don't want to. And we've got to get past that to recognize that if we don't acknowledge those people, we are doing more harm by calling ourselves Christians than we ever could in any other way. So it's not just, work hard and be a contributing member of society. It's about who we are as God's children in how we're going to treat our brothers and sisters. Yeah.
And I tell you, I'm glad, I was going to mention this a little bit ago, conversation went a little differently. You kind of got it back so I can circle back to it. One of the favorite changes, and this is, in theory, this is such a small change that our conference made several years ago, but to me, it represents such a massive mentality shift when we changed one of our core conference principles from ministry to the poor to ministry with the poor. Because the first way, even though it is meant well, it said this is something we're going to do to you because you can't help yourself. The second way says this is something we're going to do with you because while we understand there are things that we can do that you can't, there is something that you bring to the table that we can't. And it's got to be a partnership. And I think that's a critical thing to think about as we're thinking about how we do things, and again, our role in it. Even as those of us who maybe have advantages to others, it's not our job to go in and just be saviors and fix everything. Right. It is our job to partner with others, to be in this interconnected community that God has given us to make the world a better place. we can't do it all on our own. And more importantly, we don't have to do it on our own. We shouldn't do it on our own. We should look for the ways that we can get together with others to do the good for the world around us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Beautiful way to end it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Well said.
Thank you. Holly, thank you so much for coming.
This was fun.
This has been a delight. We're glad you're here, that you joined us on this Consumed by Grace podcast, which you can find in a lot of different places, but I can't remember them. Brooke, where can they find it?
I know. You can find us anywhere you find your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other podcast listening platform. You can also watch us on YouTube. So if you want to see our beautiful faces, you can watch us on YouTube.
We're here. If you have any thoughts on this, any interactions, we would love to chat with you about us. Feel free to drop us an email, drop us a comment. We would love to interact with you in that way. If you're enjoying what we're doing, give us a like. If you're not already following us, give us a follow on whichever one of the 87,000 platforms that are out there, including probably several that I don't even know about at this point. And if you're really, really enjoying us, share us with a friend who you think might enjoy what we're doing here.
Yep. We look forward to seeing you next week on episode 4.
Episode 4.
Yes. And I don't remember what we're talking about in episode 4.
Well, we're talking about the social principles.
Well, true. We are talking about social principles.
And we're talking about the 4th one, and we will let you be teased by that. We'll see y'all next time.
Bye.